The wind howls across the endless peaks of the Blackstone Mountains, carrying with it the heavy scent of snow and the echoes of distant drums. Below, rivers cut through the valleys like silver veins, feeding fields that lie scarred from old battles. The continent of the East trembles under the weight of two great powers, kingdoms whose fates are destined to clash. To the east lies the kingdom of Hwa-Ryun, a dynasty of splendor and wealth. Its capital is not merely a city, but a jewel wrought by human ambition. Golden-roofed palaces rise tier upon tier, their sweeping eaves glistening under the sun like dragon wings. Bridges of jade span lotus-filled lakes, while marble courtyards stretch wider than battlefields. At the heart of it all towers the Grand Hall of Radiance, a structure so vast and luxurious that its red pillars, each carved from a single sacred tree, reach heavenward like the arms of gods. The banners of Hwa-Ryun, crimson dragons embroidered with threads of pure gold, ripple across every wall, snapping fiercely in the wind. Inside, the dragon throne gleams from a dais of polished jade. King Jin-Mu ascends the steps, his robe of blood-red silk trailing behind him like fire across stone. The robe itself is woven with golden serpents that seem to slither and coil with each movement, his sleeves wide and commanding, edged with sapphires and black pearls. His crown is a circlet of hammered gold set with 12 flawless sapphires, glowing in the lamplight like stars captured from the heavens. The hall falls silent as the king sits. Rows upon rows of ministers bow low, their robes glittering with gemstones. Even in stillness, Jin-Mu radiates a power that chills the heart, his eyes sharp, his jaw set, his very presence a weapon. A strategist without equal, his mind is a battlefield, every thought a maneuver, every word a calculated strike. Behind him, carved deep into the jade wall, is the image of a dragon coiled around the heavens, its maw open, as if preparing to swallow the world. Far beyond the rivers and the jagged Blackstone range lies the rival throne, the kingdom of Baek-Ho, the realm of the White Tiger. Where Hwa-Ryun is elegance, Baek-Ho is raw force. Its palaces are carved into the cliffs of the mountains, their roofs iron gray, their walls blackened with soot and scarred by war. Colossal statues of warriors with swords raised skyward line the fortress gates, their stone faces locked in eternal defiance. The throne hall is lit not with lanterns of silk, but with roaring iron braziers that throw wild shadows across walls carved with the shapes of tigers devouring their prey. Here sits King Dae-Seong, a warlord king forged in fire and blood. He wears no jeweled robe, but armor of dragon-scale steel, black and silver, each plate layered over scars that testify to battles survived. His cape is torn from years of campaigns, yet it rests upon his shoulders like a mantle of destiny. His crown is not delicate gold, but a circlet of black iron set with a single crimson ruby, glowing like a drop of frozen blood. He sits upon a throne of stone and iron, massive and merciless, carved from the mountain itself, a seat that reflects his rule. The two kings, though separated by valleys and rivers, rise to speak on the same night. In the Grand Hall of Radiance, Jin-Mu raises a jeweled goblet of wine, his voice calm, yet burning with ambition. The rivers and mountains cannot remain divided. The dragon shall soar above all banners. The age of Hwa-Ryun's destiny begins tonight. In the fire-lit hall of Baek-Ho, Dae-Seong thrusts his sword high before 1,000 roaring generals, his voice shaking the pillars. The land bows not to words, but to steel. The tiger shall rule with fire and claw. Let the weak tremble. The age of conquest begins. Thus, under 2 moons and 2 thrones, the drums of war awaken. The clash is inevitable. The night sky above the capital of Hwa-Ryun glows with lanterns, their soft golden flames reflected in the still waters of lotus ponds that line the courtyards of the palace. But inside the Grand Hall of Radiance, the mood is not serene, it is thunder. The crimson banners of the dragon ripple against the walls as the great ministers, generals, and royal strategists gather around a map table carved from obsidian, its surface inlaid with jade rivers and golden mountains that represent the land itself. At the head of the hall, King Jin-Mu sits high upon the dragon throne, his robe trailing like a storm cloud. The jeweled crown upon his brow glimmers faintly under the torchlight. His sharp gaze sweeps across the hall, silencing the murmurs of his court. Beside him stands grand strategist Hwa-Ryun, a man of thin frame but piercing intellect. His robe is not adorned with pearls, but with embroidered constellations, as if his wisdom comes from the heavens themselves. On the other side kneels General Kim Woon, the Tiger Slayer, broad-shouldered, clad in silver-scaled armor, his hand never far from the hilt of his sword. The ministers bow deeply. "Your Majesty," says Hwa-Ryun, unfurling a scroll of maps. Baek-Ho gathers its armies. "Our scouts report that King Dae-Seong has moved his Black Iron Legion to the River of Flames, near the Blackstone Range. If he seizes the river crossings, the eastern provinces will fall within a fortnight." A murmur of unease ripples through the court. General Kim Woon slams his gauntlet fist onto the table, rattling the jade markers. "Then let us meet them in the field, before they cross." The white tiger thrives in the mountains, but on the open plains, the dragon's fire will consume them. But Jin-Mu does not answer immediately. He leans back on his throne, his eyes narrowing, his mind weaving strategies unseen by others. His voice, when it comes, is low and deliberate. "The tiger is strong, yes, but strength without cunning is a sword without a hilt. To fight him on the plains is to fight his will. No, this war shall be written in shadow before it is written in blood." The court listens in silence as the king rises. He steps down from the throne, his robe whispering across the jade floor. At the map table, he moves a single golden dragon marker across the obsidian surface, placing it at the mountain passes. "We shall not meet him where he expects us. We shall starve his armies, cut his supplies, bleed him until his claws grow dull. And when his strength falters, the dragon shall descend, and the tiger will be crushed beneath our talons." The ministers erupt in agreement, though some glance nervously at the boldness of the plan. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Baek-Ho, under the shadow of firelit braziers, King Dae-Seong holds council of his own. His generals, hulking men in iron armor scarred by 100 battles, kneel before him on the black stone floor. One general speaks, his voice like gravel. "My king, our scouts report that Jin-Mu strengthens the eastern passes." He waits, as if a fox hiding in its den. "Shall we march directly, or burn his villages until he comes forth?" Dae-Seong rises, his armored form casting a towering shadow across the hall. He unsheathes his great sword, its edge glinting red in the firelight, and drives it into the map table with a thunderous crack. "Let him wait. A fox may hide, but a tiger hunts. We shall march through the passes, tear his defenses apart, and take the dragon throne for our own. The rivers will run red, and the land will know its true master." The hall roars with the voices of 100 generals pounding their fists against their chests, their chants echoing like thunder. Two kings, two councils, two paths. The Blackstone Valley lay in uneasy silence, its rivers gleaming silver beneath the pale moonlight. It was a land neither kingdom fully owned, but both coveted. Farmers had long since fled, leaving behind broken mills, scorched fields, and abandoned shrines. It was here, upon this fractured land, that the first sparks of war would be struck. From the east, the banners of Hwa-Ryun approached like a crimson tide. Thousands of soldiers marched in perfect formation, their armor lacquered with black steel and trimmed with gold. Each step they took resounded like thunder across the valley floor. At their head rode General Kim Woon, astride a black stallion, his dragon-scale armor gleaming like liquid silver beneath the starlight. His sword, Moon Fong, hung at his side, its blade whispered to have never known defeat. High upon a hill, General Kim raised his hand. The army halted. Behind him, the royal standard of Hwa-Ryun, a golden dragon on crimson silk, unfurled in the wind, blazing in the moonlight as though the heavens themselves watched. From the west, the ground trembled with the roar of drums. The Baek-Ho army surged forward, a sea of black armor and steel helms, their torches blazing like fire across the mountainside. Their war cries echoed like thunder as they descended into the valley, their tiger banners snapping fiercely in the night wind. Leading them was General Baek-Jang, a towering man clad in jagged iron armor, his great axe strapped across his back. Beside him rode war priests, their faces painted in white, chanting incantations to the tiger god. The two armies came into view of each other, and the silence shattered into a storm of horns and drums. On one side, General Kim raised his voice. "By the will of the Dragon Throne, we claim this valley. Step aside, or be crushed beneath our steel." On the other, General Baek-Ho roared in reply, his axe gleaming in the firelight. Steel breaks. Blood spills. Tonight, the tiger feasts. The valley seemed to hold its breath. Both sides surged forward, the clash inevitable. Steel met steel, shields splintered, and the night sky erupted with the roar of battle. Sparks flew like stars across the valley floor. The war of the dragon and the tiger had begun. The valley roared to life. Horns screamed, drums thundered, and the earth trembled beneath the fury of two kingdoms colliding. The armies of Hwa-Ryun surged forward like a crimson tide. Their front lines bristled with long spears, shields interlocked in perfect formation, the golden dragon banners flapping furiously above them. Archers knelt in disciplined rows, bows strung with silk cords, their arrows tipped with barbed steel. As the first war horn sounded, a storm of arrows soared into the night sky like a dark cloud of death. The moonlight flashed across their heads before they rained down upon the valley. The Baek-Ho soldiers answered not with fear, but with rage. They lifted their tower shields, iron plates clashing as they locked together in walls of steel. The arrows struck, clattering and snapping against the armored barrier, but the tiger warriors advanced relentlessly, roaring as their war priests beat drums and chanted prayers to the tiger god. Their torches burned like rivers of fire as they charged down the slopes. General Baek-Ho raised his massive axe, pointing it toward the crimson tide. His voice boomed across the battlefield like thunder. "Break them. The tiger does not kneel." The Baek-Ho warriors surged, slamming into Hwa-Ryun's spear lines with brutal force. Spears cracked, shields shattered, and men screamed as the clash became a storm of blood and steel. General Kim Woon's stallion reared high above the chaos, and with a cry he drew Moon Fong, the silver blade catching the torchlight. He slashed down, cutting through a Baek-Ho warrior as if through paper. His soldiers roared in answer, pushing forward with renewed fury. But Baek-Ho was no ordinary man. With a swing of his colossal axe, he smashed through 3 soldiers at once, the ground shaking with each strike. He was like a storm given flesh, a beast in iron, his laughter echoing even as blood sprayed across his armor. The river that split the valley began to run red as both sides fought for every inch of ground. Horses screamed, men toppled beneath trampling hooves, and sparks from clashing steel rained like meteors across the battlefield. From a distant hill, hidden from sight, King Jin-Mu of Hwa-Ryun watched the clash unfold with cold, calculating eyes. Draped in robes of blood-red silk and a golden serpent crown, he whispered to his strategist, "Tonight, the tiger thinks strength will win him victory. But strength without wisdom is a blade without a handle. Let him bleed himself dry." Far across the battlefield, in his iron throne hall, King Dae-Seong of Baek-Ho sat upon a black stallion of his own, his armor glimmering in the torchlight. He raised his blade high and roared, his voice carrying across the valley like a storm. "Forward! The white tiger devours dragons tonight." The battle raged without end. The fate of kingdoms was written in blood beneath the stars. The clash in the valley raged like an endless storm. The cries of men, the clash of steel, and the thunder of war drums echoed across the Blackstone Mountains. Yet, high upon the ridge overlooking the battlefield, King Jin-Mu of Hwa-Ryun stood still, his crimson silk robes rippling like fire in the night wind. His golden serpent crown glimmered under the moon, and his sharp eyes pierced through the chaos below. Beside him knelt grand strategist Cho Myung, a man of calm intellect, his long beard braided with silver threads. He held a scroll painted with ink, its surface covered in sweeping strokes that mapped the valley, rivers, and mountain passes. He bowed his head slightly as he spoke. "The white tiger fights with raw strength, Majesty. Baek-Jang strikes like lightning, but lightning always burns itself out. The enemy has overcommit to the center. If we strike now at their flanks, the tiger's roar will turn into a whimper. Jin-Mu's lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of 1,000 deaths. Then tonight, we teach the tiger the cost of arrogance. Signal the dragon wings. At once, a horn blared from the hilltop, its deep note rolling across the valley like thunder. From the forests hidden on either side of the battlefield, Hwa-Ryun's hidden divisions emerged, the dragon wings. Cavalry clad in blackened steel and crimson silk banners burst forth, their lances glinting with moonlight. They charged down the slopes like avalanches, slamming into the unguarded flanks of Baek-Ho's army. The Baek-Ho warriors staggered under the sudden assault. Their shield walls broke apart, men screaming as horses trampled them underfoot. The once mighty advance of the White Tiger faltered as the disciplined dragon wings carved into them from both sides. General Kim Woon, seeing the moment, raised Moonfong high, its silver blade gleaming with a light that seemed to defy the night. His cry cut across the battlefield. For the dragon throne. Break them now. His soldiers roared as one, pressing forward with renewed fury. But amidst the chaos, General Baek-Jang did not retreat. His massive axe rose and fell, crushing men and splitting shields, his voice booming like a war god. Cowards, hold your ground. We are the tiger's claw. No dragon shall cage us. Even as his soldiers fell around him, Baek-Jang carved a path of destruction, his eyes burning with unshakable fury. Yet his men were being outmaneuvered, the tide of battle shifting against them. Far in the distance, upon a warhorse clad in black iron armor, King Dae-Seong of Baek-Ho raised his sword high, his cape torn by wind and battle. His face was carved with rage, his voice thundering across the blood-soaked valley. Baek-Jang, hold the line. The tiger does not yield. The two kings, one a mind of fire and serpents, the other a storm of steel and claws, watched as the valley drowned in war. Blood ran like rivers into the soil, arrows blackened the sky, and sparks from blades lit the darkness like stars. But only one truth became clear. The dragon had sprung its trap. The valley roared with chaos. The dragon wings had slammed into Baek-Ho's flanks, and already the battlefield was turning into a graveyard. Bodies fell like scattered leaves, shields splintered, and the crimson banners of Hwa-Ryun snapped high, catching the wind of victory. Upon the ridge, King Jin-Mu's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. His golden serpent crown caught the moonlight as he whispered, almost to himself, "The tiger will be caged before dawn." But far below, in the heart of the storm, King Dae-Seong of Baek-Ho was unmoved. Sitting tall upon his warhorse clad in black iron, his armor glistened with blood and firelight. He watched his forces buckle and bend, but his gaze remained steady, unbroken. At his side rode advisor Hwa-Ryun, a scarred veteran who had fought more wars than most men lived years. Hwa-Ryun leaned close, his voice low and sharp like the edge of a dagger. "Majesty, the dragon has sprung its trap well. If we remain, we will be devoured whole." Dae-Seong's jaw tightened, but his eyes did not waver from the ridge where Jin-Mu stood like a vulture. Slowly, a cold smile crept across his face. "Then let the dragon believe his prey is dying. Tonight, the tiger bears its second claw." He raised his sword to the night sky. Its blade reflected the fires below, turning it into a shard of living flame. With a thunderous voice, he roared, "Signal the iron tide." From beyond the mountains to the west, horns boomed, deep, guttural calls that shook the ground. A moment later, the sound of rumbling like thunder filled the valley. The soldiers of Hwa-Ryun froze as the earth trembled beneath their feet. From behind the blackstone ridges poured forth Baek-Ho's hidden force, 10,000 strong. Warriors clad in black iron armor, their helmets crowned with silver tiger crests, advanced in perfect unison. At their head marched the Iron Tide, Baek-Ho's elite phalanx, shields interlocked, spears thrust forward like the teeth of a beast. The dragon wings, triumphant only moments ago, now found themselves ensnared. The Iron Tide surged into their flank, crushing the cavalry beneath a wall of steel. Horses screamed, riders toppled, and the crimson banners of Hwa-Ryun began to fall into the mud. General Kim Woon fought fiercely, Munfang's silver arc cutting through enemies like light through darkness. But even he felt the ground shake as the iron tide pressed in with unstoppable force. His voice strained above the clash. "Hold, hold, men of Hwa-Ryun. Do not yield." Yet the tide was turning. High above, Jin-Mu's smile faltered. He watched as the trap he had so carefully set began to unravel, as though the tiger had chewed through the cage with its fangs. His strategist, Cho-myung, stepped forward, alarm flashing in his eyes. "Majesty, this was no blunder of Baek-Ho. This was bait. They lured us into the valley to spring their own trap." Jin-Mu's hand tightened upon the jeweled armrest of his command chair. His eyes narrowed, cold and sharp. "So the beast has claws, but a dragon does not fear the tiger. Prepare the second wave. The battle is not yet lost." And in the blood-soaked valley below, King Dae-Seong raised his sword once more, his roar carrying over the screams of dying men. The tiger devours the dragon. The armies collided once more, steel against steel, will against will, as the night sky thundered with the clash of destiny. The battlefield churned like a storm-tossed sea. The iron tide advanced relentlessly, their shields and spears a wall of death that swallowed the dragon wings whole. The cries of dying men and the clash of steel echoed through the valley, until it seemed as if the mountains themselves shuddered. King Dae-Seong roared triumphantly from atop his black steed, his flaming blade cutting through the night sky. His voice carried like thunder. "The dragon bleeds. Press forward, sons of Baek-Ho. Crush their spirit. Tear down their banners." And indeed, the crimson banners of Hwa-Ryun wavered. Soldiers faltered under the iron tide's crushing advance, the once proud cavalry scattered like leaves in a storm. But high on the ridge, King Jin-Mu did not flinch. Seated upon his elevated war chair, draped in crimson silk embroidered with golden serpents, he looked not like a defeated king, but like a hunter who had been waiting for this exact moment. His strategist, Cho-myung, pale with alarm, whispered urgently, "Majesty, we are being pushed into the gorge. If we do not retreat, the dragon wings will be annihilated." But Jin-Mu only raised his jeweled goblet and let the wine spill across the armrest of his throne, staining it like blood. His eyes burned with icy calculation. "And what do tigers do, Cho-myung?" The strategist blinked, uncertain. They pounce." Jin-Mu's lips curved into a sharp smile. "And what happens when a tiger pounces at the coils of a waiting dragon?" He rose, his crimson robes swirling like fire in the wind. He lifted a golden fan etched with dragon scales and snapped it open, signaling the hidden banners waiting beyond the valley. At once, horns blared from the cliffs above. The ground shook as thousands of concealed Hwa-Ryun soldiers emerged from the mountainsides. Archers hidden in caves, artillery concealed beneath false ridges, and cavalry lying in wait among the forests. Flaming arrows ignited the night, blotting out the stars as they descended upon Baek-Ho's iron tide. A rain of fire poured onto the phalanx, their once unbreakable formation thrown into chaos. Shields burned, soldiers stumbled, and the iron tide's advance faltered beneath the dragon's fiery breath. At the same time, war drums thundered as the Crimson Serpent Legion, Jin-Mu's most elite infantry, charged from both flanks. Their armor glistened with lacquered red, their swords curved like fangs, and their discipline unmatched. From his warhorse, General Kim Woon rallied his battered men, his voice hoarse but unyielding. "The dragon strikes. Regain your strength, warriors. For Hwa-Ryun." With renewed fury, the dragon wings reformed, cutting down the disoriented iron tide. King Dae-Seong's triumphant roar turned into a growl of rage as he saw his soldiers collapsing under the sudden ambush. His advisor Han Yul's face darkened. "Majesty, this was his true plan. He let us think the trap was ours, when all along, we were in his jaws." For the first time, the Tiger King's hand tightened on his reins, his eyes narrowing as the valley burned with dragon fire. And on the ridge, Jin-Mu spread his golden fan wide, his voice carrying like a serpent's hiss across the battlefield. Let the world bear witness. The dragon's fangs are never seen until they pierce the heart. The tide of battle shifted once more, the valley becoming not merely a clash of armies, but a stage for the brilliance and ruthlessness of kings. The battlefield was chaos incarnate. Flaming arrows turned the night into a second sun, and the cries of the wounded echoed across the valley. Amidst this inferno, champions sought each other out, men whose strength could turn the morale of thousands. At the heart of the fray, General Kim Woon rode like a spirit of vengeance. His silver blade, Moon Fong, gleamed like a shard of the moon, its curved edge slicing through the smoke and fire. His crimson plume fluttered from his helm, and his voice rang with unyielding command. Hold the line. The dragon's breath scorches all who oppose it. His horse surged forward, crashing into Baek-Ho's wavering ranks, cutting down 2, 3 for soldiers with every sweep of his blade. The Crimson Serpent Legion rallied behind him, their chants pounding like drums of war. But from the opposite side, a shadow loomed. The soldiers of Baek-Ho suddenly parted, making way for their champion. He was called Dugwon, the Iron Beast, a giant of a man, his armor black as midnight, layered with plates that made him look more monster than human. His helm was wrought into the shape of a snarling tiger, its fangs dripping with crimson paint, its eyes glowing with firelight. His weapon was not a sword, but a massive iron hammer, spiked and brutal, as if forged only to crush bones. The ground shook as Dugwon stepped forward, his voice booming like thunder across the carnage. Dragon Dog, face the hammer of Baek-Ho, or cower like the serpent you serve. Kim Woon's eyes narrowed. Around him, his soldiers faltered, for they had heard tales of the Iron Beast. Entire squads broken under his blows, shields shattered like twigs. But Woon spurred his horse forward, Moon Fong raised high. Then let the beast learn that even iron can break under the silver of the moon. The clash was titanic. Dugwon's hammer swung in an arc, smashing into the earth, sending dirt and blood spraying into the air. Kim Woon leapt from his horse at the last instant, his body twisting midair, Moonfong flashing like lightning as it struck the Iron Beast's shoulder. Sparks flew. The blow would have cleaved lesser armor in two, but Dugwon's plates held, though dented. The giant roared and swung again, forcing Woon to dive aside, his armor scraping against the burning earth. The two circled, a general and a monster, the tide of battle parting around them as soldiers from both sides paused to watch. Every strike was thunder, every parry, lightning. Munfang's silver arc clashed against the hammer's iron weight, and each collision sent shockwaves through the valley. From the ridge above, King Jin-Mu watched intently, his golden fan resting against his lips, eyes narrowed. Moonfong proved to the tiger's cubs why the dragon still soars. And from the opposite cliff, King Dae-Seong leaned forward, his iron fist clenched tight. Dugwon crushed their spirit, tear their general apart. The duel raged amidst the storm of war, the outcome still uncertain, but the stakes, nothing less than the heart of two kingdoms. The battlefield was a sea of fire and shadow. Smoke rolled across the valley like black waves, and the cries of dying men echoed between the mountains. Flaming arrows streaked through the night sky, hissing as they fell, but suddenly, an eerie silence spread across the chaos. Every soldier, Hwa-Ryun and Baek-Ho alike, turned to face the clearing where two titans stood. From the ranks of Baek-Ho stepped Dugwon, called the Iron Beast. His armor was not forged for beauty, but for terror. Black tiger plates, scarred from countless battles, each dint a story of blood. His helmet bore snarling fangs, and his shoulders were crowned with spikes that glistened with gore. In his colossal hands rested a hammer, so massive that lesser men would collapse under its weight. The weapon's head was jagged, spiked, a thing built to crush bone and stone alike. He lifted it slowly, the iron groaning, and pointed it across the battlefield. At his gesture, the warriors of Baek-Ho began to roar his name, stamping their feet, chanting, Dugwon, Dugwon, the tiger's fawn, the Iron Beast. From the Hwa-Ryun ranks, one man answered the call. General Kim Woon, the Crimson Dragon, stepped forward. His crimson plume streamed behind him like a burning banner, and his dragon-scale armor glimmered with silver light under the glow of torches. In his hand, the blade Moonfang shone like liquid starlight, its curve elegant, its edge whispering of death. He did not roar, nor did he boast. He only walked, steady as a mountain, his gaze locked on his foe. The silence deepened. The world seemed to bend around them. Dugwon, booming, mocking. A dragon dressed in silk dares face the hammer of Baek-Ho. When I am finished, they will bury you in pieces, little general. He raised the hammer above his head and brought it crashing down. The earth itself screamed. Stone shattered, the ground split open, and soldiers on both sides stumbled from the quake. Dust rose in choking clouds. But Kim Woon was not there. His crimson cloak flickered through the smoke like fire in the wind. Moonfang darted, swift as lightning, slashing across Dugwon's shoulder. Sparks flew, steel screeched against armor, and blood spattered black against the dirt. The giant bellowed, his roar shaking the valley. He swung again, the hammer smashing a crater where Woon had stood a heartbeat before. Every strike was a thunderclap, every swing a falling mountain. Yet the dragon danced, sidestepping, spinning, his blade cutting arcs of silver light through the night. The two warriors clashed again and again, hammer against blade, earth against sky. Soldiers watched with wide eyes, their own battles forgotten, as if the duel itself had become the war. Kim Woon's chest heaved, sweat trickling beneath his armor. His mind was sharp, his movements precise, but Dugwon's strength was monstrous. One mistake, one slip, and he would be crushed like glass beneath stone. Kim Woon, cold, steady, under his breath. The beast is strong, but strength alone cannot master the dragon. At last, Dugwon swung wide, his hammer smashing into a boulder and lodging there for an instant. The mountain shuddered from the blow. In that single breath of weakness, Kim Woon struck. Moonfang gleamed. The silver blade slashed across the exposed gap beneath Dugwon's arm. Blood gushed in a crimson spray. The iron beast staggered, roaring in pain, his massive hammer slipping from his grasp. But even wounded, Dugwon laughed, a terrible, guttural sound. Dugwon, defiant, threw blood. Even in death, the tiger does not kneel. He lurched forward, trying to seize Woon with his gauntlet hand. The dragon did not falter. With one final strike, swift and merciless, Kim Woon drove Moonfang into the giant's chest. The iron beast froze, his roar breaking into a gasp. His colossal frame shuddered once, then crashed to the ground like a collapsing fortress. The battlefield shook. Silence followed, deep, stunned silence. Then, like a tidal wave, the roar of Hwa-Ryun's soldiers shattered the night. The Crimson Dragon had slain the Iron Beast, and with his fall, the war itself began to shift. The dawn broke red, spilling light across the valley like blood. Mist rose from the river that coiled between the jagged mountains, its silver waters reflecting the smoldering remains of last night's carnage. On the banks, the two armies once again faced each other, rows upon rows of steel and banners, their cries shaking the skies. But today, the war would not be won by brute force. Today, it would be decided by cunning. High on the cliffs, General Kim Woon stood with his commanders. His crimson dragon cloak whipped in the mountain wind, and his eyes burned with cold calculation. He studied the winding river, the narrow ravines, the rocky ridges where archers could lie hidden. The battlefield itself would become his weapon. Kim Woon, to his officers, calm and sharp. The tiger believes his hammer alone can break us. Let him. We shall give him ground, then take the earth beneath his feet. The river will not only drink his blood, it will burn. The officers exchanged uneasy glances but obeyed. Orders were carried swiftly across the field. Meanwhile, across the waters, King Jin-Mu of Baek-Ho stood beneath his great war banner, a black tiger roaring on silk. His army stretched like a living shadow, drums beating in thunderous rhythm. He raised his sword, eyes blazing with fury at the loss of his champion Dugwon. King Jin, furious, forward, drown them in steel and fire. Let the river carry their corpses to the sea. The Baek-Ho army surged like a tidal wave, shields locked, spears thrusting, they thundered across the valley floor. Their war cries echoed between the mountains. At first, the Hwa-Ryun soldiers fell back in apparent panic, their lines breaking, their banners retreating. The tiger roared in triumph. But it was a trap, hidden along the ridges above the river. Thousands of archers revealed themselves, arrows tipped not with steel, but with pitch and fire. On Kim Woon's signal, they loosed. The sky turned black. A rain of flame fell upon the riverbanks, striking barrels of oil secretly placed along the shore the night before. The calm waters of the river ignited into a blazing serpent of fire. The Baek-Ho soldiers, caught between the flames and the steep cliffs, screamed as fire consumed the reeds, the boats, and their very ranks. The river that had promised them life became a burning grave. Panic spread like wildfire. Horses reared, men stumbled into the flames, and the mighty army of the tiger fell into chaos. From the high ground, Kim Woon raised Moonfall, his voice carrying over the inferno. Kim Woon, roaring, "Now, drive them into the river's jaws." The Hwa-Ryun troops, once feigning weakness, now surged forward with ferocious strength. Shields clashed, blades pierced, and the soldiers of Baek-Ho were forced backward into the burning current. On the far bank, King Jang watched with horror as his mighty host crumbled. His fists clenched around his sword, veins bulging with rage. But his commanders pulled him back. If he fell, Baek-Ho itself might collapse. The flames raged high, and smoke turned the sky to night. When at last the river was choked with corpses and embers, the battlefield lay still. Kim Woon stood on the cliff, his armor gleaming red in the firelight. He had not just won a battle. He had broken the spirit of an empire. But he knew this was not the end. The tiger would rise again, and when he did, the dragon would be waiting. The night air was heavy with smoke as the two great armies faced each other across the swollen Daewha River. The river roared with spring floods, its surface silver under the moonlight. On one side stood the legions of Hwa-Ryun, banners of crimson and gold fluttering like burning suns. On the other side, the tiger-emblazoned hosts of Baek-Ho filled the valley with their chants, shields raised, spears bristling like a forest of steel. The earth itself trembled under the weight of thousands awaiting the signal. King Jin-Mu sat upon a war chariot carved of gilded bronze, draped in his robe of scarlet silk embroidered with serpents that shimmered in the firelight. His crown gleamed with pearls and sapphires, his face sharp as a blade. Raising his jeweled hand, he gave the order. Flaming arrows streaked across the sky. They fell upon barrels of oil floating in the river, and within moments the waters themselves ignited. The once calm surface transformed into a writhing serpent of fire, its crackling roar louder than the beating war drums. Soldiers of Baek-Ho cried out as the flames leapt high, blocking the crossing with a wall of living fire. For a moment, despair gripped the Baek-Ho ranks. The river had become their grave. But amidst the chaos, a figure rose, Seonhwa, the servant who had risen through cunning and instinct. Clad not in the jeweled armor of lords, but in simple steel lined with tiger skin, his eyes burned brighter than any crown. Seizing a commander's horn, he bellowed above the flames. "The tiger does not bow to fire. Cut down the forest. Let the river carry our wrath." Obeying his voice, soldiers surged into the nearby woods, chopping trees with desperate strength. Trunks crashed down, stripped into makeshift rafts. Guided by Seonhwa's vision, the Baek-Ho warriors dragged the rafts into unburned currents and pushed forward, shields raised against the sparks. Amid the blazing inferno, Seonhwa stood at the helm of the first raft, spear in hand, defying the flames as he led the charge. Arrows rained from Hwa-Ryun archers, but the tiger soldiers pressed on, shouting his name. From his chariot, King Jin-Mu's eyes narrowed. For the first time, he saw not a king on the battlefield, but a servant whose brilliance could rival his own. A shadow of destiny fell across the burning river. The fire could not consume the will of men. Seonhwa's daring act saved thousands and turned certain death into hope. Around the campfires that night, whispers spread. Perhaps the tiger god walks with him. Dawn broke red as blood over the battlefield. The smoke of the burning river still drifted in the air, curling like black dragons across the horizon. On the plains beyond the Daewha, the armies of Baek-Ho had reformed, their morale hardened by Seo-jun's daring. Yet before them rose an unbreakable sight, the Tiger Wall. The Tiger Wall was a fortress unlike any other, built of black stone cut from the mountains themselves, its battlements lined with steel spikes. Statues of snarling tigers guarded its gates, each larger than 10 men, their stone fangs dripping with morning dew. From its towers, horns of iron bellowed, calling Hwa-Ryun soldiers to arms. Behind those walls stood King Jin-Mu's finest generals, armored in dragon scale, their helmets crowned with golden plumes. This was no mere defense, it was a message. The dragon cannot be touched. The soldiers of Baek-Ho trembled. To storm such a fortress was to invite death. Yet in the center of their ranks, Seo-jun lifted his spear, his voice echoing. A wall is only stone. It cannot bleed. It cannot breathe. But we can, and we will. His words rippled through the ranks like fire through dry grass. And for a heartbeat, even the towering wall seemed less impossible. King Dae-Seong, standing atop his warhorse clad in black and silver armor, watched with pride as his men rallied. But he knew pride was not enough. Turning to Seo-jun, he asked the question all warriors feared. Can you break this wall? Seo-jun bowed low, his eyes never wavering. Not with swords, my king. With shadows. That night, under the cover of darkness, Seo-jun led a chosen few along the cliffs. The moon was veiled by clouds, and silence hung heavy over the valley. Like hunters stalking prey, they scaled the jagged rocks with ropes and hooks, their breath shallow, their hands raw. Above, the wall loomed, a beast of stone ready to devour them. Hours passed as they climbed, each slip a heartbeat from death. Yet at last, Seo-jun reached the battlements. He slew the first guard with a single strike, muffling the cry, and lit a small lantern of blue fire, the signal. Suddenly, chaos erupted. Baek-Ho's soldiers surged from the shadows, storming the gates as Seo-jun's team cut down the sentries from within. The massive iron doors groaned and burst open, and the Tiger Wall trembled with the roar of thousands pouring through. For the first time in centuries, the unbreakable fortress fell not to kings, but to the cunning of a servant who had risen higher than any noble blood. The legend of Seo-jun spread like wildfire. Around every fire, soldiers whispered, "Not even walls can hold him back." But far away, in the grand hall of radiance, King Jin-Mu sat silent upon his throne, his jeweled fingers tightening on the armrest. His eyes, sharp as blades, gleamed with a dangerous thought. If he is not stopped, he will rival even me. The bells of Hwa-Ryun tolled like thunder across the capital. From the golden rooftops of the palace to the crowded market streets, their sound was the voice of doom. The Tiger Wall had fallen. The impossible had been broken. Fear swept through the kingdom like a shadow devouring the sun. Inside the grand hall of radiance, the ministers of King Jin-Mu trembled in their jewel-threaded robes. The vast jade pillars that once seemed eternal now looked fragile, as though they too might crumble. Whispers filled the chamber. Baek-Ho marches this way. Seo-jun leads them. The dragon throne is no longer safe. But upon the dragon throne sat Jin-Mu himself, still and silent, his crimson robe flowing like blood across the dais. His crown of gold and sapphires glittered under the lantern light, but his eyes burned with something darker than fear, rage. "Do you think stone and fire will end me?" he hissed, rising to his feet. His voice carried across the hall, silencing the cowardly chatter. "No, the dragon does not flee. The dragon burns the sky itself." With a sweep of his sleeve, he ordered the assembly of the heavenly guard, warriors clad in armor forged with jade and steel, their helmets shaped like dragon heads. They fell to their knees, pounding their chests in unison. At their head stood General Unsa, a woman of fierce eyes and scarred cheeks, her blade long enough to cleave a man in two. Meanwhile, beyond the palace walls, Baek-Ho's army thundered closer. The streets shook with the march of iron boots, and the crimson banners of the dragon trembled as the white tiger's roar filled the horizon. Seo-Jun, mounted on a black horse, pointed his spear toward the palace. "Break their gates, and their king is ours." The clash came like a storm. Flaming arrows lit the night sky, crashing into golden rooftops and setting the palace ablaze. The gates of the capital groaned as rams smashed against them, sparks flying like meteors. When they burst open, chaos poured into the city. The once orderly avenues of jade bridges and lotus ponds became rivers of fire and blood. Inside, Jin-Mu donned his battle armor, scarlet steel embroidered with dragon scales, and stepped down from the throne. His crown he cast aside. "Let kings and soldiers alike see me not as a ruler, but as the flame that devours them all." In that moment, he was not a monarch, but a demon wrapped in silk and steel, determined to make his final stand within the very hall where he had once ruled unchallenged. As the burning sky reflected against the jade pillars, the dragon and the tiger prepared to clash not as kingdoms, but as men. The night sky above Hwa-Ryun was torn apart by fire. Smoke curled into the heavens, blotting out the stars, while the crimson light of burning rooftops bathed the capital in a hellish glow. The Grand Hall of Radiance, once a monument of jade and gold, now burned like a pyre. Its towering red pillars cracked under the heat, and its golden dragons carved into the walls seemed to writhe in agony. Through the shattered gates of the palace rode King Dae-Seong of Baek-Ho, the White Tiger. His ironclad soldiers roared his name as they cut down the last of Hwa-Ryun's defenders. Mounted on a massive white stallion, his black and silver armor gleamed in the firelight, his tiger-crested helm casting his shadow across the smoking throne hall. In his hand, the great warblade Severance glistened with blood. At the heart of the hall stood King Jin-Mu, cloaked in scarlet dragon scale armor, his sword drawn, flames curling around him as though the fire itself obeyed his fury. The ministers had fled, the heavenly guard lay fallen in pools of blood, but Jin-Mu stood unbowed, his crimson cape whipping in the storm of smoke. Dae-Seong dismounted, his boots pounding across the burning jade floor. The two kings faced one another, their armies falling silent outside the gates, knowing that history itself hung on this duel. "Jin-Mu," Dae-Seong growled, his voice carrying like thunder. "Your kingdom lies in ashes. Your dragon is broken. Yield, and I may grant you a death without chains." Jin-Mu raised his blade, its edge reflecting the fire like molten gold. His lips curled into a cold smile. "Yield? Dragons do not kneel to tigers. Even if my kingdom burns, I shall drag your soul into the flames with me." With a roar that shook the collapsing rafters, they clashed. Steel struck steel, sparks scattering like meteors. Dae-Seong swung his massive blade in sweeping arcs, each strike heavy enough to split pillars. Jin-Mu countered with speed and precision, his crimson blade darting like a serpent's fang. The air was filled with the ringing of metal, the crash of falling beams, and the roar of the inferno consuming the hall. At one moment, Jin-Mu feinted left and slashed across Dae-Seong's chest plate, sparks flying as the dragon's fang tore through steel. The Baek-Ho king staggered but did not fall. He answered with a crushing strike that split the jade tiles beneath their feet. The duel raged through the burning throne room. They fought atop the dragon throne itself, amidst falling embers, beneath a ceiling collapsing into flames. Every blow was not just a strike of steel, but a clash of destinies, dragon against tiger, mind against muscle, ambition against sheer will. As the hall began to crumble, their blades locked, faces inches apart. Sweat and blood streamed down their faces, their eyes burning with hatred and pride. "This hall will bury us both," Dae-Seong roared. "Then let it," Jin-Mu spat, forcing his blade forward. Let history remember only that the dragon burned the sky. The roof of the grand hall cracked, beams crashing down as fire roared around them. Yet neither king let go. The dragon and the tiger fought on as the palace itself crumbled into ash.
Not good.
The Grand Hall of Radiance had become a grave. Flames devoured the jade walls, and the once mighty dragon carvings now crumbled into dust. The sky beyond was painted in crimson and black, the night shattered by the roar of fire. At the heart of the inferno, two kings still fought. Their armor was torn, their blades cracked, their bodies bleeding, but their wills unbroken. King Jin-Mu of Hwa-Ryun staggered back, his crimson dragon armor scorched and battered, his golden blade trembling in his grip. His breaths came ragged, yet his eyes still burned with ruthless brilliance. Across from him, King Dae-Seong of Baek-Ho stood bloodied, one knee bent, his warblade severance chipped and heavy, but his stance unyielding, like a mountain refusing to bow. The soldiers outside could only watch as the ceiling of the throne hall split apart, sending cascades of burning beams crashing to the ground. Yet still, neither king retreated. With one final roar, they lunged. Dae-Seong swung his great blade downward, a strike that could split mountains. Jin-Mu sidestepped, his golden sword flashing upward like lightning. Steel met steel and shattered. Both blades broke, fragments flying like meteors. But momentum carried them through. Jin-Mu drove his broken sword deep into Dae-Seong's chest. At the same instant, Dae-Seong's shattered warblade pierced Jin-Mu's side. Blood burst from both kings as their eyes locked one last time. For a moment, time froze. Dae-Seong's voice was a rasp. The tiger does not kneel. Jin-Mu, coughing blood, gave a faint smile. Nor does the dragon. They both collapsed as the dragon throne behind them crumbled into the fire. The flames roared higher, consuming them. And so, the dragon and the tiger died together, their feud sealing the fate of their kingdoms. When dawn broke, the once golden capital of Hwa-Ryun was a smoking ruin. The banners of both kingdoms lay in ashes, indistinguishable in the rubble. Survivors whispered of the night the dragon and tiger devoured each other, leaving no victor, only silence. From the mountains, wandering monks recorded the tale in scrolls, calling it the Song of Ashes, warning future kings that pride and ambition can burn empires to the ground. Two kingdoms, two kings, one ending. The land, at last, was quiet.